Can you hear me now? Yes, you can hear me. I even can hear myself. Thank you for inviting me to Estonia and to Tallinn. I have been here before, and it's a pleasure to be in your city. So I will, when I get 100% pensioners, not very far from here, I will go to Tallinn and Estonia quite a lot more than before. Although I can take a boat, I think, as Juhani Ilmarin does, 2 hours, he says, I have to go by plane. So I have to leave you a bit before the panel, or about the panel discussion. So I'm trying to give you some impression of Norwegian policies and experiences concerning older workers. I myself has been working with this within this area for 21 years, 22 years by now. And I'm saying a bit more later on about that. Some few informations about the Norwegian society. We have, of course, like all Europe, demographic changes, post-war baby boom, combined with low birth rates. Low birth rates is, I would say I think we are number 3 in Europe concerning birth rates. We have 1.995. So that's not very far from where we should be, which is 2.08. So low birth rates, but we have had low birth rates during the 80s and 90s. So the population growing older. In the labor market, we can see that there will be an increased need for social care and increased need for employees in social care. I think some say that in 2030 we must be between 45 and 50,000 more people in social care. So that's quite a challenge in the next 20 years. We have a good economy and we have good pension system, a new pension system. I'm going to say something about that later on. And the average income has more than doubled since 1990. We have good health and we have a longer life expectancy. This is like many other Nordic countries have. If you look at the employment rate for older workers, you can see that we are quite high up there. We have had a bit reduction the last 2 years. We say that it's because of the financial crisis, but we are not very sure of that. But at any rate, it's quite high. As you can see, it's Iceland and Sweden is a bit better than we are. 68.6% is the employment rate for older workers, 64. So we got a new old pension reform from this year, where we have a flexible retirement age from 62. Our pensionable age has been 67, although we have had some agreements before between the unions and the employers' associations, which made it possible for industry, especially, to go by 62. But it has been many say that this has influenced the reduction or made the reduction of older workers' representation in the working life worse. But now it's from 62, but it's a flexible retirement age. So if you postpone your retirement, you will get a higher pension as more you work. So if you go by 62 instead of 67, I think you will have your pension reduced by maybe 30% each year, rest of your life, about 30%. So we think, or at any rate the politicians think, that this will give an incentive for people to work longer. We hope so, not very sure, because we can see that many more people nowadays that are taking a combination between work and pension. So if you look at if this could extend the working hours in our working life, we are not sure. Because many of those who are taking the combination would maybe have been working full-time up to the time that I leave the working force. And a pension index based on life expectancy. mortality rates last decade before cohort attains the age of 61. That means that, for example, my cohort, I have to, after this new pension system, I have to work 4 months longer than 1 year ago. For my daughters, for example, I think it could be, at any rate, some year, 2, 3 years. So this depends on life expectancy, and this is sustainable. That's the meaning of it. It should be sustainable, because if people live longer, they need to work longer so as to keep up with the pension charges. I speak English. I should speak English once a week, at least, so as to be fluent, because you always need this kind of experience that you need to say it. So some words maybe is difficult for me sometimes. So to the organization that I represent, Center for Senior Policy, as we call it in Norway. Sometimes we say that we are working with what Johanni Ilmarin called age management, but we call it senior policy because that's in a way broader. We like to think that the main thing is to work towards management, yes, and I totally agree with Johanni when he says that maybe that is the factor beside the pension system that is the most crucial so as to have people to work longer. But as you can see, our organization is quite broader than, so to say, what's going on in the companies. So we say that we are a resource and competence center in the field of promoting active aging in working life. In working life, not for pensioners. I'm coming back to that a bit. That doesn't mean that we don't like pensioners. We do like pensioners, yes. But we are focusing totally on older workers in working life. And we are working in close cooperation with the social partners, the unions and employers associations, and the government. The major social partners are represented in CSP's board. That means that we have high-ranking people from all unions and all employers associations sitting or working in our board. And we are financed by funds from the government. And we were established in 1969. So I took over in 1988 as a director, and I said, instead of helping people out by preparing them for pensioner life, we are trying to make the working life attractive enough that people will choose to work longer, making the working life attractive for older workers. And that's quite a, you have to turn around, first we have to turn around our own mindset. And then again, this was very difficult, especially the union said, we have fought 100 years now for a lower pensionable age. And there comes a person from an organization, small organization, telling us that we should work longer. Rubbish, I said. So the first 10 years was quite hard because especially among unions, we were not very popular. But we looked at the demography, and we looked at the way that people left working life in around 1990s. We had a lot of troubles financially. 3 of our biggest banks went down, for example. And we saw that people left working life earlier than they had planned and in a much worse way. Much worse ways. I left working life with lower self-esteem. And we said that our task is to change that. So we had, during the 90s, some research projects and even a research program, which helped us a lot. Especially afterwards, I could see that they helped us in the way of changing the language. We started to use new words associated to older workers, concerning their qualities, their resources, and so on and so on. So I think that was very helpful for us concerning the language, and the language and the words we use is a part of our culture, and at the end we have to change the culture. Not only in working life, but change the culture in the big society. in 2001, we started something called the National Initiative for Senior Workers. Our board, consisting of people from the employers' associations and the unions, said to me, we have to write a letter to the Prime Minister, because now we have to work for senior policy. And this was, in a way, a new way of looking upon it also for those, both the employers and the unions or workers' organizations. So we wrote this letter, and we sent this letter to 4 ministries, to the Financial Ministry, Ministry of Work, and so on. And we got a letter back that, okay, make a plan. And we made a plan. This was about 1999. We made a plan, and we said we need 100 million Norwegian kroner, quite a lot of money. And they said, no, it's okay, you have made a good plan, but instead of 100 million, you have maybe 25 million. So we said okay. We said okay to that because the alternative was worse. But all the time, we have had a group of researchers around us because this is a field where a lot of what we call myths and misconceptions about older people and older workers has had the possibility to live all the time and still lives. So we had to break that in a way. And then again, we have to fund it on a way of doing it that has to do with facts, we say. So this initiative for senior workers lasted from 2001 to 2005. And the objectives, as you can see, awareness raising older workers' resources and qualities, stimulating and including a positive work environment for all ages and groups, establish a better coordination for senior policy among the social partners and the government. You can see the first 2 points there. Good words, yes, but what is in it? But the last one, to establish a better coordination for senior policy among social partners and the government, has been quite essential and quite important for us, I think. So this national initiative for senior workers, I say that it was most successful in focusing the seniors' resources and strong sides, because the attitudes and the opinion of older workers was and still is in parts of their working life that they are reduced, they are not willing to learn, they can't learn, they are slow, and so on and so on. But I think this focusing on resources and strong side has been quite important and successful even. And we were, for some reasons, I think because politicians were involved after some time, and also because the top managers of the unions and the employers association also spoke we used them all the time when we had conferences, for example. Always top people, because if they don't go for it, the rest won't go for it. So we used a lot of time to anchor the activities towards top management all the time. Of course, we have to do the rest. I don't see that we can't jump over the rest. You have to work on all levels, but if you don't have the top management, it's very, and now I mean in the organizations and also among politicians. So creating participatory processes, we did that all over the country in regions. So that was also very, very, I think we had a kind of success there. And we were supporting local initiatives. So there were people all around Norway that said, yes, this is a good idea, we have to do something to it, and we used them. So that was also important. And then again, competence building for professionals. From day one, I saw that this was the main question. If you don't have people around Norway having competence in helping the companies building senior policy or age management or whatever you like to call it, we would fail. We had to do that. So, and this I've tried to do for 20 years. So, the year after this initiative, we got something called the Agreement of Inclusive Work Life. And that is, in a way, an inheritance from what we call the Norwegian model of tripartite cooperation. We have a strong tradition of cooperation between the social partners. And the partners in this sense is the employees association, employees organization, and the government. And there is a long history from 1935 when the first basic agreement, the main agreement as it says, was established. In 1959, we got the Industrial Democratic Program, which also has to do with the environmental work life to do. And then we got the Agreement of Inclusive Work Life, the IE Agreement, as we call it, and which is a typical tripartite agreement. And the means cooperation, social dialogue, and broad participation. And I think this tripartite phenomenon, so to call, is maybe a bit special for, at any rate, Nordic country. I like to say that maybe it's even special for Norway. So there is a researcher called Levin, American, says this largely cooperative climate is probably one of the most striking features of Norwegian working life. And you have to see our work at senior policy in the light of that. The Tripartite Agreement on a More Inclusive Workplace, October 2001. Purposes, reduction in sickness absence, 20% in 4 years. We didn't reach that. We haven't reached it yet, but there has been a lot of work within it. There are thousands of people working with it. And we use a lot of money so as to reduce sickness. Inclusion of persons with impaired functional capacity, also very important. And there is should I say, a new, have started up again in a way that could be promising. And making older employees stay longer in their jobs. 6 months from 2006 to 2010, and we got there. So goal number 3 is the only goal that we up to now has reached. And now we have to go on further and say we are going to reach 6 months extra for each person until 2014. So this agreement was renegotiated in 2006 and 2010. And all our working life is a way dominated by, in many ways, by this inclusive work life activities, especially in sickness absence. And number 1 has, to an enormous degree, to do with prevention, how to prevent people to get sick. I don't go into that now, but of course, number 1 and number 2 also has to do with older workers, of course. And there was established working life centers in every county in Norway to follow up the agreement on a more inclusive workplace in each company. I'm looking at the watch and so we have something what we call NAV. Everybody knows in Norway what NAV is. That is the Norwegian Labour and Welfare Service, taking care of all the social policies, so to say, pensions, social help, sickness, and so on and so on. We had 19 working life centers in all counties, was established in 2002. And there are about 450 consultants, and that is not bureaucrats. That consultants who are trained in making, what should we call it, to improve working environment, to improve personnel policy or HR stuff. And very many of them have their experience in private sector, not in public sector. Do I speak? Is it the tempo okay? Okay. And we look upon those partners as those consultants as partners for Center for Senior Policy. Everybody, all 450. Which covers about 60% of the working life in Norway, 60% of all employees, should have some small or hopefully a greater competence in what we call senior policy. But of course, some of them are not as good as we wanted them to be. So we look upon our core assignment towards the working life centers to offer them competence development to those consultants and spread information, research results, and experiences. In a fortnight, we are gathering 110 of them, 2 days, only senior policy, how to follow up the companies and the enterprises in building up their senior policy. So main focus on the third objective in inclusive work-life agreement has been to challenge the myths and give knowledge about the relation between aging and work, competence development to the older workers, and to prevent obsolescence. And then, of course, management and attitudes and behavior in management. That is, as I said, and as also Johannes said, I think that is the core in all work with this. If the attitudes and the behavior with the manager is bad, you have lost. So we have to change this. And some said we have to change it soon. I think this is culture, because we have inherited our culture from generations. And sorry to say, the attitudes and opinions of older people and older workers are, in most managers' head, not very high. It's bad, so to say. So it takes a long time, and I think changing culture is not about 10 years, maybe not 20 years. It's at least one generation. We can see that when the Norwegian women started to go into working life in the 70s, and he said in 10 years they are fully on the same level as men. No, there are still some, although they are pretty okay in Norway, I would say, there are still some fields within this question that should be much better. So it takes a generation. At the same time, we have to work hard every day so as to go forward. You can't say, oh, it takes a long time that you can't do it. But you need to have ice in the stomach. And persons like Juhani, who has meant a lot to Europe and to the rest of the world concerning older workers, as you know. And you need types like me too, I think, trying to help the Norwegian working life in this respect. And of course, we have to do something to the workers' own attitudes. The workers' own attitudes, so essential, so essential. But we have seen the last 10 years there has been a change. We asked in 2003 how many of people above 60 years would like to work after pensionable age. 36% said yes. Last year we had the same. We have, I should talk about it later, a yearly survey. And last year 76% of those above 60 say we work longer than the pensionable age. Maybe they know that the pensionable age is 62, but on the other hand, there has been a change. There has been a change. And anti-discrimination and inclusion is always also in the focus. And again, focusing the older workers' resources and competence. Because as Johannes said earlier here, people are so... when people hear the word older worker, oh yeah, slow, can't learn, can't go into ICT, that's the normal associations. And we have to change those normal associations to the opposite, to use the experience, to use the qualities of the older workers, which are there, and everybody knows, really. This is our website, and I use it because you can see that wasn't this one then? This one. If you go there, you find it very much, not very much, but quite some English information. Quite some information in English if you like to go there. We have a journalist, an editor on full time, working all the time in news, especially focusing what I say qualities and resources. And that is the page win-win, which we say this every company or enterprise could use that so as to build up your senior policy. And I would just take one, and this also you find, of course, in English, and even some in German, but English, first of all. So we say that to develop a senior policy in your company, that is a process. It's not a special measure as many things. It's a process. You have to work with your organization. And I had thought I should use quite some time for this, but I can see that it's not possible. 5 minutes, yes. But go into this website and point at the English flag or the Great Britain flag, and you'll find this, and you'll find a lot of stuff about how to do it. Because preparation phase, mapping phase, for example, as was said earlier, senior workers' wishes and needs. You can't build a senior policy without having mapped that. But also mapping, for example, age composition and skills composition. That's very, very, it makes the employers think, oh, is that true? In 5 years, I will lose 10 of my main employees and their competence. Yeah, conduct an age profile. Have you drawn up the age profile and so on? Have you analyzed and so on and so on? In practice, we often can see when we go to enterprises, they're jumping to concrete measures like shorter hours, which is good, heavy manual work, which is good, of course, more flexible hours, reduced position, extra long vacations. Very good, but if that is the only way of dealing with senior policy, I think you have not lost, but it's not the right direction alone. You have to go to look at manager training, manager follow-up, skills development, and competence transfers. To jump over, for example, manager training, that's not, I wouldn't say that's very wise. You have to do that, I think. And in the long run, we need to change mindset, change attitude, change behavior, and change company enterprise culture. But maybe it takes a lot more time than we like to think. But we have to start today. And changing the meaning of being a senior, cultural, yeah, and so on. From talking about seniors to talking as seniors. I've met managers 65 years talking about the older workers with us. He is not involved. He is not old, you know. To be old, that's low status. So I say very often, look at me. I'm an old man concerning being in working life. And don't say I'm proud of being an old man, but I like to be an old man. I have a good life. I have a good life. So why should I tell about all the things that could happen to me in the future, which is negative? Because there are reductions, as you know, but we have quite some jump up to what is our top, what you call it, Johanne, the maximum level of what we can, functional capacity. We are almost always quite low. We have quite potential to go. Everybody of us, all older workers or all older people. So now soon I'm ready. We have a magazine, 6 of those in the year. Those goes to companies mostly and to HR people. I think 5,000 or 6,000 companies or enterprises. And electronic newsletters weekly, 7,500, mostly companies, and so on and so on. And this Norwegian Senior Policy Survey each year from 2003, and we can see quite big changes in the attitudes among a representative group of managers. Quite some changes during those 9 years. And we have the award, Senior Initiative of the Year since 1991. Use the medias a lot. Medias. I was very glad to see that the television was here. That's the way we had done it all the time. TV, national newspapers, use a lot of time working with those people. Okay, 2 more. Yeah, we are also training up union representatives. I think that's essential too. They need to know about senior policy or age management. So the main reasons, it's fair to say that there's been a change in the view of older workers during the last 10 years. And the 3 main reasons: mass media communication. We have to do that all the time. That has been the main thing for me during my period as a director. Go to the biggest newspapers, go to the television channels, because they have their attitudes. Normally, if newspapers earlier should have a picture illustrating what I write about older workers, you can see an old man in the park throwing some bread to the ducks. But in the article, they are telling about the working people, right? So that is the attitude. When you are 65, you should sit on a bench in the park throwing bread to the ducks. And we have a last 8 or 10 years, 7 or 8 years, we have debate concerning new pension system. Very, very, create a lot of interest, and a lot of people has participated. Not only politicians. Very awareness raising. And of course, the last part. When I go some few times to Europe, I'm a bit embarrassed because those figures, is. But we are lucky, and we have oil, as you know. Yeah, these questions you can read. I think you'll get this sent to you by email from the organizers here. So I say thank you for listening to me.